Okay.
Call this meeting to order. Mark, would you give our invocation, please?
Lord, thank you for this time we're able to come together, Lord, and just go over the things that concern the city. I pray that you'll just be with us, give us knowledge and wisdom to discuss these things in a manner where everybody can understand what's going on.
Yes.
I just pray that you'll just guide us every step of the way. We know that your word says that your ways and thoughts are higher than ours, and we know that. And I personally feel that this group is called to do this job, and your word says that we're called together for a purpose, Lord, and I just pray that you'll just help us and guide us every step of the way. I thank you for those that are here. I pray that you'll watch over everybody as they leave and just keep us safe and keep your hand upon us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Inman,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Rowe,
Here.
Barker,
Here.
Drennan,
Here.
Hernandez, Staggs,
Here.
All right. We'll turn it over to Janice. I guess you.
I am the lead here.
Okay.
First announcement, I'd mentioned to all that this is gonna be about an hour, and it's gonna be about an hour because court starts at 6 after us, so I kinda scheduled over. But I think the shorter time, we'll have another work session coming up. This is just kind of helping define why are we where we're at and what brought us here. And then after that, we'll talk about on another work session, the project status, the funding for them, the things we're having to do that there is not money assigned to these projects. So that will follow in another work session end of the month, maybe the 1st. And all of you be thinking, when is a good time for you guys to meet? 5 o'clock before the meeting, we could do that. Saturday mornings, I know later in the evening on off days, but input, just send me an email. I've passed out several things. The main sheet on discussion topics is really just for you to take notes and kind of highlight some of the things that I'll be talking about. First thing I want to talk about is our sales tax and history of our sales tax. And you'll have a sales tax and you will have a use tax charge at your place. We all know sales tax in Lindsay. Is my mic on?
Yes,
Can y'all hear me back there?
you might pull it a little closer to you.
Okay. It becomes very
Go ahead and straighten it out to you a little bit. There you go. To you.
training. That better?
There you go.
Yes. Better. We all know sales tax in Lindsay fluctuates considerably from year to year. That is basically due to what our industry is, the oil field. This year, if you'll look, it looks like it's coming in and we're gonna hit a good number at the end of the year. If the economy continues in the second half of this budget as it is now. But you can see over the history in 2018, you were up at 3.3 million in sales tax through that budget year. As economy affects, you've seen this 2021, 2.4, and that's almost 900,000 difference over 3 years ago. And part of that recognition is you didn't adjust your spending, you're spending more than you're bringing in. Looks like 21-22 is up a little bit, and then we're hoping 2023, through our current budget, it will come in hopefully higher than the previous year, 2.6. I even have some historical where back in the 15-16 budget, you collected as much as 3.6 million. So there is a big fluctuation due to the economic things going on in our community. With that said, monitoring your budget is very important. Sales tax funds, your general fund, police, fire, EMS, cemetery, parks, other governmental, social services. So that is what pays for those funds. Use tax, any questions on just history or dynamics here? These are pulled directly from the tax commission, so they are not what we identified, it's what y'all.
Could you give us a definition of use tax so everybody knows where that comes from, please?
Use tax is goods that are bought outside the state and delivered into the state. If you'll notice on this use tax report, Amazon used to not do tax, and Amazon sales now go into your use tax. And if you'll see, it was about the 18-19 year, notice 17-18 was 181, and that has remained pretty consistent. That's your Amazon and internet purchasing, helping that drive. Of course, there's some oil field purchasing that may fall into that, but they've got to be in the city limits. And I know there's a lot ordered off locations in there, but if they're not in the city limits, we don't get it. Or if it's not delivered to the city limits, I should say. So use tax is basically the goods and services that are purchased outside the state of Oklahoma and brought in for people buying for goods and service. Amazon is probably your biggest thing right now.
Where does the 1 cent tax, does it go into the sales tax that's designated for our first responders?
All of this is all tax collected. This is not distributed out to the departments.
Okay.
This is the bulk sales tax brought in. And what we can rationalize here is if your numbers are down, then those numbers are down going into those departments. Because you've got a formula that you divide all of that out to, so it's a portion of what that 1 cent calculates. Does that make sense? I kind of rambled on about that.
So the 1 cent tax, basically, it would rise and fall as our the spending or economy goes up and down too.
Yes.
So anything, it's a percentage based on that.
Right. And on the emergency tax, I know one of the good years I've kind of been going through past, you know, they collected as much as 700,000. Last year it was 600,000. So, and that's because that 2.6 million. This 3.1 million is probably when they got the 700,000. So I'm talking about that as a whole, and just to keep confusion down a little bit. Anything else on the use tax or taxes? This is a 4% rate, that's what we collect, and that includes the 1 cent dedicated to emergency services. And I'm not sure when that went into effect. It's been many years ago, I think. Yeah.
I think it went into effect in 2007.
Yeah. And that money is transferred, I was told in the past, when needed, over into the general fund to help cover services. And, or the budget, you know, it's not funded. So, and at some point in time, that was divvied up between police, EMS, and fire. So it's not going just to one public safety, it's going to all of them, which will offset some of their departmental concerns. You also have printed budgets of year ends, and I've tried to highlight at the top of June 30th, 21 And, June 30th of 22. Let's just start with 21. Let me get this city. I always like to start with city because that is your legal entity that is reported, or your findings are come from the state auditor. If you have issues, it's in your general fund. Your Lindsay Public Works or all public works trust do not have to follow the same strict guidelines and the Municipal Budget Act, even though all cities pull them in to do that. But if you get a deficit in a line item or something, then that's not a finding in your audit. But general fund, it is. So, let's take June of 2021. We can see, kind of highlighted your revenues that was budgeted versus your revenues that were collected, and these are actual numbers. If you go through the expenditure line, you see, of course, your expenditures must match your revenues. You see your expenditure, and it shows you were deficit in that budget of the $214,000. So those are the kind of things that creates red flags and audits findings. And we do not have an audit done for 21. I'll show some things here in a minute. Any questions on that? The percentage of the budget is the percentage collected or spent. So we basically, in your revenue spent or collected 89%, we spent 94% of the budget. But our revenues didn't come in as budgeted. And you can go back to your sales tax and you can see that was a down year. So that's why you didn't come in like that. And this, so we're gonna go to the June 22 year end. I will give you one of these and I'll get through this. Before I do that, let's go to the LPWA in June of 21. Again, you have your revenue summary and your year-to-date actual expenditures all through June 30th. And again, we had a revenue shortfall in the utilities. This is primary utilities, water, sewer, electric, all of those that are identified in the revenue summary. We spent in those expenditures under the budget, but if you'll see the current month, it was $415,000 in the negative, but the year end came out more in a positive. Of course, those are, once you get an auditor involved, are going to be adjusted, and generally they're adjusted higher, particularly, or lower, because there's a lot of things that they will have to assess against that as well, following the governmental accounting basic standards that you're supposed to do. Any questions on those? So that's 21. In 22, on your city, through year end, we only collected 73% of the revenues that was budgeted. Your expenditures were over that budget number by $922,000. So that's going to be one of those things in the audit, when you do get your audits for 21 and 22, that are going to be you're gonna get a finding on, and there's no way to correct it other than moving forward. Whoever's looking over here, whether it's state auditor, whoever, they're gonna see that these moves are made to make these corrections. And, when you approved the budget this year, you approved it with the numbers submitted to you with a $500,000 cut. So that's gonna help, if we make that target, reduce that 922 coming over as a fund balance carryover. And this also shows, department budgets, their year-end expenditures. These are summaries, but those are actual expenditures from their budget. And then there's a detailed list of what a breakdown of our revenue is. Moving to the Lindsay Public Works. Again, your revenues did not come in as projected. Your expenditures were under control. There's some effort in where you may see more balance in your public works. But that's a different of just revenues and the breakdown of their expenditures in the Lindsay Public Works. And you can see on the second pages the breakdown in the revenue of where those categories are and where they come from general government. If you'll notice on that 1 cent sales tax under general government on the second page, that is the allocation to emergency services. Any questions? So we're about 300,000 short in revenue in '22, compared to what we were collecting. Any questions? And these are the financials that are ran at the end of the month. Once bank accounts are reconciled, they are reconciled back to these financial statements. These are the things that auditors will come in and look at and pull when they come in, and identify the reconciliation process, the reporting process, and randomly select certain things to review and whatever. For instance, I've done this in the past. There's an area I think we need to check into that, and I may direct them to go check into something, and they will do that. But this is what is submitted to the state for reporting. This is what we use to make budget amendments from. And speaking of budget amendments, part of those deficits have been created because proper budget amendments have not been done over time. One of the information I passed out is the findings in the year-end 20 audit. And those findings address things that we're still dealing with internally. So that adds to the problems that we're creating with where did the money go? It's, you're not properly making the budget amendments to address those things, or they have not done that. Let's say finding one, internal controls, expenditures, and proper authorization of accounts payable, which includes appropriate segregation of duties. Sometimes cities have a hard time doing this if they're small, because you don't have enough staff to really segregate those duties as you would like. Like for instance now, we've got a comptroller, we have grant request. She does not fill out the grant request and then write the check. That's internal control issues. Another staff member creates the paperwork to create the grant request funds. Those funds are then turned to her to make those funds and those requested. Those are the type of internal controls that auditors look for, and that's for, you don't want one person collecting, creating checks, printing checks, and approving POs. And we have those segregated, and that's not occurring. So I'm not saying that's happened in the past, but I know in some cities that's a struggle just due to the staffing size. But due to our our specific situation now, that is very important that we keep those internal controls going on. The condition, it talks about basic kind of what I just said, one reviewing, one doing it, and then and it also talks about even in the 20, department heads were not provided updated budgets to determine if they were within their annual budget. So they were spending and not really giving any guidance on, do I really have the money or do we really have the money? So that's where spending started.
And one of the problems that I see, and I dealt with this somewhat, this report was done, if I'm wrong, tell me, you got this audit June the 9th, 2021. Well, it went back, and that was long after I was even here, but I mean, you know, you don't have any information like we are now. We're still trying to grasp account information, and that's, I'm not trying to say that, you know, but that's a problem. You see what I'm saying? Because this report was given to the city of Lindsay on June the 9th, 2021. And it goes back to effect, it has to go back to effect, but it's 2020. We haven't got a accounting audit for 2021, nor in line to do 22, so.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's good, I'm saying that's a problem.
Well, I think what we forget, you had a pandemic occurring, and I know I was with another community and auditors weren't coming on site. They weren't coming to do audits. Generally, they start coming after June of your year end. So I'm sure, much like other communities, these auditors didn't even get their feet on the floor till September, October, something like that. And maybe later than that, because we're not the only client. They have a lot of clients and we're on the list. We're not the first on the list. So whatever we get in line at that point. But COVID and the pandemic created a lot of issues, not only in Lindsay, but with a lot of communities because of the shutdown, the loss of revenue. Spending, goods and services got higher. It just created a lot of issues. But back to these findings here, of course it says failure to go. And in these kind of findings, your management responds to them. And I kind of got confused here about, this person's off a year, that the new findings will be corrected in the July 1, 21 to June 22 audit. But I can see how that could be because they didn't even get the audit till June 21, so it's hard to make those in prior years. That was your one finding, basically internal controls. On the next page is 2. And this is compounded by several things, but, it's about the billing and the collections and how they're not being actively pursued. I guess there was a utility rate increase, and I think Lisa and I did look that up, and there was a very minute change, but it didn't get into the system. And that's where supervisors overseeing those functions and things, I think I harped on them a lot when new rates were changed. Have we got it done? Have we got it done? And they were working on it, but if you don't have anybody pushing to get that done, sometimes, staff doesn't get informed, because it happens here at this table. And if there's nobody going back to staff and telling them this happened, then they don't have a clue. So, we are now, it says you're not collecting overdue, collections on a regular basis, resulting in a significant amount of balances that are past due. That has and is been a problem, but we have taken steps to tighten that collections. We've hired the collection agency. Staff is really trying to get there and get that done. I know our police, court fines have done that. And it also talks the meters that have 0 readings, these are not replaced or followed up on. Part of this, we were expecting warranties and those kind of things to get us meters to change out and do those things, and it just didn't happen because those meters were dying. That's a problem, as part of your revenue loss. We are working, and we have started, and this would show in addressing these audit findings in the next audit, is the internal controls and accounting procedures designed to update and account for utility billing. So those things are being addressed. Part of Crawford's, while they're here, they're helping us to get those controls in place and done. And they're basically the effect of all this. Failure to maintain and monitor utility billing can lead to lost revenue for the city. And it did create lost revenue for the city. And of course, you've got management's response, and but these weren't done, except what we're doing now. And 3, it really doesn't pertain to this. It was more internal controls and tracking of debt balances. This is with the LIDA, Lindsay Industrial Development Authority, which is not affecting our bottom line, but it is part of the findings. In 04, this is the biggest one, under the state statutes. It prohibits the creation of a deficit fund balance in any fund except for public trust. And I don't think I passed that sheet out, or did I bring it? In this same audit that I'm pulling and reading the findings, it shows this is where a good portion of your fund balance went. You had a deficit 580-something thousand balance in the general fund, and whatever you may have had carrying forward, that just ate that up. So there's a part of this cycle that started this storm that we have gone through to get to where we are. The amount of expenditures of the general fund exceeded appropriations, which contributed to a deficit fund balance. And those, again, are all violations of Title 11, Section 17. The city appears to have violated state budget laws and by allowing a deficit in its general fund, and that's where you have issues. Of course, management agrees to address these, and we're still addressing them. Oh, the next page is where I highlighted, that's where your excess of revenues or deficiencies over expenditures, I've highlighted that number there. And I had the full and complete audit that I could email to you on 20. Of course, it's the last audit we have, but it also, it tells a story. It tells a story of why we are where we are. And the story is, in 21, we didn't do some things we needed to do. And in 22, I think that transition started a little bit to bring that, at least get your accounting in the proper format and your reporting requirements. One thing that was occurring is not all things were getting posted to this budget. So that's where we went through. Now, those funds in 21 and 22 are 21's reconciled, but they're unaudited. 22 financials are not reconciled, and they're not, they're unaudited. And they're decent numbers, but those little tweaks that they come across are fine, that they may miss an expenditure that didn't get posted, or those kind of things may fluctuate that a bit.
So you said 2021 is finished.
21 has been reconciled, it has been put into a format. Now, what auditors or CPAs do, they've sent it up the chain to review by a second set of eyes to
Right.
see that things are, what they see is agreeable, and that's where that's sitting.
Okay,
And
and we'll, at that point in time, when they agree to that and everything, the second set of eyes, do you go ahead and submit that to have it audited to get us in compliance?
We can do that, and I would like to do that. They the auditors like to, if you got two of them you gotta catch up on, come in and get them both done at the same time. My decision on that would be, or the council's would be, how much longer are you gonna take to get 22 done? If it's another 6 months, we could have 21 done and get started. So that's still in the works. They're working on 22. I don't know that they're that far out, but it's probably gonna be after the first of the year before they're all finalized and put together, to get our auditor on them. And here's the other issue with that, when I'm talking delays. Lindsay at that time will get it at the end of the line, or in line. And so, once you even submit these to an auditor, it may take them 3 or 4 months to get here. So it's not a quick turnaround. Much like Crawford on site now. They have one person assigned here, but we weren't on their schedule. And so they have most of their staff already scheduled out to other cities and towns, and they have put one here to help us keep moving, but she also gets sent to other cities and towns as well. So they're not exclusive to us, and no CPA will be exclusive to us. So the frustrating as management side is that process, and I've had to deal with that in some other cities. It's just, when you get behind, they don't get in a hurry to get you caught up. I mean, they want to get you caught up, but they have numerous other clients that they're dealing with too. So,
Is there a cost to the audit? I mean, do we pay them to come audit us?
yes.
Okay.
Generally, those costs are about, and I don't know what they'll charge Lindsay, 25,000 to 30,000
$25,000-$30,000
per year.
per year. So we're looking forward to spending 50 to 60 by the time we get both these done.
Yes, yes. Kind of running through this real quick. I know we're short on time, but I still have a few things to cover, I would like to cover. but, I think we'll hit the findings. These findings are critical in moving forward, and that really keeps that negative deficit moving forward with you, and, your increased expenditures. The things that we're doing to, is what expenditures have we reduced to help move on and keep some overhead? There's still more to do, but what we've done so far is, passed out a little sheet with your purchase cards on it, balances. And I've given a brief summary. We just went from May to September in '21. And we went from May to September in '22. And from May through September in '21, you spent $180,000 on purchase cards, charging. In May of '22 through September, I think that bottom line is $27,000. So you see, we have taken steps in expenditures. That's a $160,000 difference in just buying stuff. Now, I could go back through the whole fiscal year and pull all of those. It'll be a big number, but this is just a snapshot of what we're trying to do with that reduction. The other items that we have done internally that is saving money at this point is Public Works. They've lost, and this is through quitting, not firing. Nobody has been terminated in any way in this process. This is just through attrition. They left for other jobs or whatever. They've lost 3 in the water, and the golf course lost 1. We have not replaced them. The utility billing has lost 1. The electric, I don't think they've lost any. Fire is 1 short. EMS, there's move up and down. I think they maybe want, what they've done or what we're doing there is bringing in some more part-time, and that helps in many ways from benefit cost, and helping us determine. They like to paramedics. We are an advanced life, which advanced EMT is all that we're required to do. So there has been a step up. They've tried to do that. Paramedics are very hard to find. So that's where we're at in that. We have several people doing double duty. We are advertising and interviewing for city clerk. Lisa is helping us in the city clerk area. We're still advertising for the accounts payable and accounting clerk. Lisa is doing payroll and doing those things. So she's assuming multiple duties and carrying that load. We have hired a comptroller to what would have been the finance director to do accounts payable, doing tax payments, keeping and tracking those kind of things. So we're still some short, and that this isn't a cut, but we're still short employees. So therefore, we're not paying anybody. So there's some savings going on in that, and it'll be a temporary savings primarily, mostly in those departments. Even hiring the city manager, you're saving. There's no benefits, there's no insurance, retirement contribution, those kind of things. And that's a hefty $12,000, $15,000 a year that is not being paid out. One of the things on the savings I have done, your retirement plan has an actuarial done annually, and the city of Lindsay has been contributing 6%. That's above and beyond what is needed. The actuarial came back, we only needed to fund it at 4.21%. So that change has been made, and that's a savings about $30,000 a year. to the purchase cards, for whatever reason, those postings has been through journal entries, and therefore they had not ever been showing up on your claims list. We are now making those moves to, if you see the Bank of America, that is your purchase card spending, and I think Lynn is breaking those down by department. It's not a huge amount anymore, but that would have been very helpful, I think, in prior years of seeing that on your claims list. And it should have been on your claims list. I don't think there was an intent not to do that. It was just being journaled entry, and when you do that, that does not show up on claims. So we made those changes, and those are showing up on your claims list now. I'm just going over my notes. Any questions so far? So basically, in your audits, let me make sure I got my list done. In your audits, I've looked back, 17, 18, 18, 19, those were good. There were no findings there. I mean, your financials were good. I mean, when I say good right now, Lindsay didn't ever have a good fund balance. You didn't really have a reserve. You didn't have, when you got into these short cycles of money not coming in like it should, you really didn't have the reserves to fall back on. So that's what brought you into this deficit. So this has been a multi-year accumulation of issues that I think we are in the midst of trying to correct. We're making progress. The ship is turning ever so slightly, but we'll have another financial report at our meeting on October and just see how those fund balances are moving up. I'm not going to say growing, but they're moving up. But you go through, I mean, you had findings in 20, but in 21 and 22, you're still going to have some heavy findings in those audits because of expenditure deficits and over budget, not doing budget amendments, all of those things that keep you in line. We've got 3 open grants out there that I don't know why they were never closed. The COPS grant, I've got I think the water line grant with soda, and we've got several grants we need to spend money on that we've gotten money on. But on the utility side, where we really are tightening up with the 2, it takes a lot to get it done, particularly with the bill calls and the calculations. But penalties are being assessed. We mail out disconnects, and it has really gone really smooth. Yes, people are upset, and people, I've spent a lot of time just working with some utility customers to listen to them, understand, but it's back to, you never should have been allowed to get $1,500 into utility bills, and it's a struggle now. We're not doing the citizens a favor when we let that happen. That's probably court gathering. I'm sorry about that. We're also, we're working to get our utilities to collections in our past dues. We're going everything that is over 90 days. And that takes a lot of pulling and moving and those kind of things.
On the soda grant, water line improvements, have we spent money on that already? Have we,
Yeah.
We've done a lot of improvements, spent the money, but have we received any of the grant money?
We have received the grant money. What I'm struggling with is finding the documentation on the match that we were required to do. And it was spent, but it really wasn't accounted for very well.
Okay, so the paperwork hadn't been done.
Right.
We received the money and spent the money.
Yes.
Okay.
Same with the cops, that's generally a 2 or 3 year, and that basically funds a police officer or two, helps pay their salary and training over a period of time with some city match. But for an extra officer or two, the match is, you know, a decent amount to have that benefit. Because right now we are short police officers. But I gotta close, and this was a 2020 grant,
Okay.
so.
Now, have we received anything on ARPA?
We have received ARPA notification. We were gonna receive two, when we received the big one, or back before I came. We got the short one, and the last time we checked, we had not got that big one. And I need to get on the phone and call, because the email to me was, it's forthcoming shortly after you receive that small. And that money, with another work session, I want the council to help define how they want to spend that money. Because that money cannot build reserves. It's got to be spent on things allowed. And there are, I'll bring to the table a lot of things that need fixing, purchasing, buying, that we're not doing. But that is something council can help me and staff define your priorities on what we need to do. So that will be, hopefully we'll get that money by the end of the month, and then that will be a topic of our next work session of, here are the project list we have, y'all help me define your priority and get those things done and completed.
I'd like to say this, one thing we need to realize, Janice knows what she's doing. You know, they came and asked me if I'd fill in. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried the best I could, but I promise you I didn't know what I was doing. She knows the financial stuff, and that's what got us, you know, I may have unintentionally got us in worse shape. Wasn't what I was trying to do, but she does know what she's doing, so I appreciate her efforts.
Thank you, Tom. And I'm gonna go back to the perfect storm. We have just really weathered, you know, the pandemic really started a demise. Plus you had staff turnover, experienced staff turnover. You had, declining revenues. Your metering system is, the way we're reading meters is the 1980s. I mean, they're taking sheets of paper out, handwriting those readings, then taking them back to the ladies, and they're taking those sheets of paper to every account and inputting those readings. Where with your AMI, you pull those readings in, those go to your bills. Yeah, you gotta run some some reports and calculations to see that sometimes these type of readings don't pull. Could be a tree blocking it or so on and so forth. So you've got to review them. But this is an intense, time-consuming process for the employees, because we are keeping those bills really within 30 to 31 days. The ladies there were on Sunday trying to get these bills out and finalized, because you have to do adjustments, you see big errors, you know, lots of room for errors here in inputting numbers. We're making that goal. We're also doing our cutoffs, and it's hard. Now we do agreements for those who contact us. It's hard sometimes, and I understand their dilemma, but they've got to make some payment. I mean, they haven't really, COVID in the utility, just kind of with no direction from management of any kind, they just did what they, you know, we're on the community care, so we're not cut off. We're on this, so we don't get cut off, and or penalties, and it really was an issue and is an issue to still resolve. So those we're doing routinely. Any other questions here? This is just a start. I'm hoping this may answer some you know, I think the perception there was this just happened in a year. It really didn't happen in a year. It happened over a 3 or 4 year period.
So this has been going on since probably 17, 18.
Well, you had good audits, you didn't have the best fund balances, but then you have COVID, which your revenues declined from utilities to sales tax to these community care programs that we didn't get reimbursed for. There was just a lot of that I was at another community when COVID came, and it was a difficult situation to weather through with employees, customers, and utility accounts, because everybody was struggling at that point. And so Lindsay took a step of being good, but also it affected our revenue and collections as well.
I know we're short on time, but I know I'm getting a lot of questions and everything. Can you give us an update on the land sale?
The land sale, I have not got in. Next, probably on the council agenda, there'll be some discussions because there's some other issues out there standing on land purchases that we may need to discuss in executive session and such. So those will come forth and do that.
Was it appraised? Or did we get a good appraisal on it, or?
It was appraised back probably 2 years ago.
Okay.
And that's another thing on another piece of property that we need to talk about in moving forward in our water project problems. We will be getting a consent order from DEQ on the water lagoons that need to be made. That was ongoing. I kind of picked that up when I was here. In fact, probably due to the lag of nobody dealing with it, it's created that consent order. So really the pandemic, the cost of goods, the significant cost of goods for departments now that we're affecting we're all affecting, from groceries to goods to everything. And I'll just say excessive spending is part of our problem. Declining revenues, and our metering is still a problem. And talked to Brandon and Sam today about we're not getting those meters fast enough. I don't know what, they keep saying, well, you know, supply and demand, you know how that is. These meters have a life, and they have a warranty, and they have a battery. And if we're gonna have one sitting in a warehouse for a year, somebody's gonna have to figure out when that warranty starts. And because that's been a problem with some other cities, getting older meters and then installing. So we'll be talking to the representative from UTS other than our usual contact, going up the chain, I guess, to say that. But I would like to schedule another time, and this one will be on the ARPA money, the projects that are on the table. And other ideas that any of you want to discuss, just let me know, and we'll figure out how we can get that on the table to do. Was this helpful enough just to get started to understand why we are where we are?
For me, I like the idea of being able to get all this stuff out here so we can talk. I mean, we get to hear about it, and we don't actually have to make a decision on this in a short period of time.
Yes.
We're, you know, along with the folks out there, nobody understands how things happen. You mentioned about supply, you know, not the supply and demand, but like when the COVID thing kicked in and work stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it didn't. It picked up, but the materials got higher.
Yeah.
But I can remember going through like Maysville and meeting nobody on the road.
Yeah.
But yet, my wiring stuff more than doubled.
Right.
And, you know, when we was doing the shopper topper, lumber at that time went from $3 for a 2x4 to $12. I mean, with those cost spendings, you know, going on, and I mean, that's one way of, you know, some places was making money, but whenever people aren't working or aren't doing anything, there's no money being spent. And to see, I mean, and one of the deals, like what you're finding is some of this stuff went back. Well, we're the ones having to make decisions on how to try to right the ship. We're not the ones that broke it,
Correct,
but yet we're responsible for fixing it.
right. Yeah.
And any information helps, because I mean, this stuff isn't what I do for a living.
Well, I gave it to you very simple. I mean, I could have had a CPA and you could have had probably a bench or piece of paper, but, that's the way I look at it, and I just kind of assess and see how things have changed and moved, and we're doing better in the fact we've got a hold of the problem. It's not fixed, totally. We still have reductions in this budget that need to be made. And I brought, and I didn't pass it out, this budget was approved based upon a $500,000 cut. And that's tough, and even though I've said, you know, a few little things, 30,000 here, 25,000 here, I mean, it adds up over time, but there are still cuts that need to be made, and the goal is not to lose jobs. Now, through attrition, we haven't replaced some. It's putting a lot of burden on some others who are doing double duty, but we're maintaining until we can find the right staff with the right skills, and that's key, to help us internally with financial reporting and accountability. And that's what it's all about, is accountability. So, I appreciate the time. I hope this helped. Kind of email me of times that are good for you guys to meet on a work session.
What's the general area? I mean, what's the time frame? You looking at this month, later this month?
Probably later this month.
Okay.
If you ever see an opening, I mean, we can do it 5 before the regular meeting, if everybody's kind of geared to that, that's just an hour. Saturday mornings, 6 o'clock other evenings in councils. I mean, I'm available at your discretion.
Motion to adjourn, need a second? Second. Roll call, please. Motion here, second.
Staggs,
Yes.
Drennan,
Yes.
Barker,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.